Okay, the topic for this session is telling your story with dashboards. I'm Joe Gallant. I'm a senior product manager at InterSystems, and I'm responsible for our analytics technology, as you know, is Deep C. Also responsible for our SQL technology. Also, I'll be around all week, as will most of us, so anything that you want to talk about later, come by the Tech Exchange. I'm doing another session later in the week, and if you see me in the hallway, you see me at the party, just don't hesitate to come and ask questions. The focus for the session today, Tell Your Story with Dashboards, is not necessarily specific to our technology. It's more of a general discussion of dashboards in general. What makes a good dashboard? What makes a bad dashboard? What do some of the experts say? There's an audio recording, so they can't see my quote fingers going up. Experts, who are the experts? And they have opinions. Some may say they have rules, but we'll see. So we're going to talk about that. And also, what are the key questions when you're building a dashboard that you need to answer? What are some of the core concepts you should keep in mind when you're doing that? We'll talk a little bit about Deep C dashboards, but at a very high level. The session after this one, Mark Messias will be talking about the options you have when creating dashboards with Deep C. Both standard dashboards, using portlets, and using REST services. So I'm going to mention it in this session, but really it's going to get covered in much more detail in the following session, which is also in this room, so you don't have to leave. And again, the REST services is something Mark is one of the main focuses of his session after mine. So this first sentence I always like to put up there because what is analytics all about? It's not about making dashboards. The whole purpose of analytics is using data. You want to provide some meaningful insight, not for no reason at all, so that people can actually use that and make good decisions. So that's the main reason we do analytics in general. So how do dashboards fit in? Well, they provide a way to visualize that so you can provide insight to make good decisions. So the whole purposes of a dashboard is to visualize information, to represent some information. And in many ways, a dashboard tells a story. And one analogy you could make is, a dashboard is like, reporting a story. Think of journalism. Who, what, when, where, why, how. In many ways, a dashboard needs to answer that question. Who is this dashboard for? A dashboard that's for everybody is probably not a good dashboard. Everybody has different needs, and they need different dashboards. Where is this dashboard going to show up? Is it going to be part embedded in an application? Is it separate? When? How often do I refresh this dashboard? Is it based on current information? Is it based on old information? A very good one. Why am I doing this dashboard? Because someone told me? A dashboard should have a meaning and a reason to be there. So let's talk about some of those types of questions. Again, so why am I doing this? If you can't define the purpose of a dashboard, chances are it's a bad dashboard. Also, a dashboard with too many purposes is probably not a good dashboard. Someone once said, the one-size-fits-all approach. Usually, one-size-fits-all means one-size-fits-none. If you try to make one dashboard that will satisfy 5 different types of users, it probably doesn't satisfy any of them. And if they have to hunt through that dashboard to find the one thing they're interested in, that's not a good dashboard. To use a journalism technology, why is this flashing? Yes. Well, if you blink in the proper interval, you will not notice. Bear in mind the flashing screen. Sorry about that. But we'll plow on. But to use a journalism, don't bury the lead. A dashboard should have a clear message. If I have to search through something on a dashboard to find the most important thing should be very obvious in a dashboard. Also, who is this for? As I said, if you have 3 different types of users who have different needs, they should probably each have their own different dashboard. Someone once said, at any point in time, a particular user is interested in a very small set of things. That's what the dashboard should provide. If they have to find the important things that they need among a bunch of other things, it's probably not a good dashboard. Does it accurately represent the data? Dashboards can lie or mislead or present information that isn't the most straightforward way to present something. So that's a question you should always ask. Is this the best way to show this particular information? How interactive should a dashboard be? You might think, well, the more the better. Well, there are certain users that if you give them 20 options across the top of a dashboard, will only use the 2 that are important, if they can find them among the 20 options you gave them. There are others who will say, what are all these cool buttons and things? I think I want to play with them. And they're being distracted from what they really need to do because they're playing with options they don't need. So, for example, we have a customer who has a dashboard that's in a lab. It's actually a big monitor screen. At any point in time, someone walking by can look up and see what's happening. That is not a very interactive dashboard. It refreshes on some interval, but there's no direct interaction to it. And there's lots of different types of interaction that you can do. There's different types of filtering and drilling. You can toggle it for different types of charts. You can toggle between the chart and the table. So there's many different interactions you can do with a dashboard. Again, pardon this flashing here. But more interaction isn't necessarily good. If this particular type of user needs 2 filters and a button to drill to the details, that's all you should give him. Don't make it hard. I once heard there was a book by Alan Cooper called The Inmates Are Running the Asylum, about technology and people who develop technology and people who use technology. And he says, developers are generous with their selfishness. Meaning, I might want to use this, so I better put it in because the user might want to use this. Just because you want to do something doesn't mean the actual end user of this dashboard will want to do something. So it is possible to provide too much interaction. Also, how will the dashboard be accessed? Is this a standalone dashboard that's available from a menu? Is this dashboard embedded within your application? So I'm going to try to fix this. So I'll continue. These questions are important. And also, if you can't answer the question, what's the purpose of this dashboard and who is this dashboard for, maybe you need to rethink that dashboard. Also, who designed the dashboard? How much user interaction was provided when the dashboard was built? Was it built by a developer who doesn't actually use the data? He just builds the data. So a practice I often recommend when deciding what dashboards will be needed is to turn off the computer, go to a whiteboard, talk to the ultimate end user and say, if you could have a dashboard that showed you certain information, what would it look like? And just draw what that type of information is. That's what and then work backwards from that. Oh, to do that, I will need to build the cube that provides this, and I will need to, because a dashboard that's not used, why bother doing it? Okay, so that brings up the question, what is a good dashboard? Notice in the quotes, good's a relative term. What's the best way to represent data? And what do the experts say, whoever they are? So let's talk about some of those experts. Again, pardon the flashing here. So one of probably the most famous expert on visualizing data, so probably the most famous person in terms of the best way to visualize data is a gentleman named Edward Tufte. He's been around for quite a while. He's written 4 books on the topics. You can see the title there. Some people consider him sort of the voice, or some people refer to him as the god of data visualization. And his link, which I can follow here. So there's his website, lots of references to the books he has, articles. He does one-day seminars all over the place. So interesting guy. And again, many people consider him the most important person when it comes to visualizing data. He has some quotes that I took straight out of one of his books here about graphical excellence. The key themes are well-designed presentation of interesting data, and it's both substance statistics and, the word we heard this morning, design. Complex ideas communicated with clarity, precision, and efficiently. The greatest number of ideas in the shortest time, you can tell when this was done, with the least amount of ink in the smallest space. So he's thinking still in the printed concept. I don't just think of it as ink anymore. And the last part I like here, graphical excellence requires telling the truth about the data. It is possible to create lots of charts and graphs that misrepresent what the data is. So I'll just briefly go through some of these terms. He has lots of these different terms. Data indicator, the lie factor. How much does this actually correctly portray the data, or how much is it misleading? Is the scale correct on this? If you're comparing two things, depending on what the scale of the actual chart is, it could be very misleading. He has a term he calls chart junk. Something that's visually there that relays no information whatsoever. For example, use of color. It's good to be consistent with color, but if things are in different color and the different color doesn't mean anything, that's just distracting. 3D. A 3D bar chart looks cool. But in his opinion, if the dimension doesn't actually add anything other than the fact that it's in 3D, it's not conveying information and it's distracting. A simple non-3D bar chart will be much better in his opinion. Now, 3D bar charts are really cool when you're in a trade show and you're looking for, what's all the cool things? Now, some people would say the fact that it looks cool may draw attention to it and people will use it. That's a counter-argument. Maybe so. But in his opinion, keep it simple. For example, one of the things he hates, and he really hates, is pie charts. He hates pie charts. And one of his quotes is, the only thing worse than a pie chart is many pie charts. And he talks about why that's the case. But again, one man's opinion. Actually, two men's opinion. Another popular person in the data visualization world is a gentleman named Stephen Few. He's also written several books on the topic. His site here, which I tried to link to a few minutes ago and actually got a network error, so let's see if it works right now. By the way, these slides will be posted, including the links. And for some reason it's not working right now. Maybe their server's down, we'll find out. But Stephen Few also has several. This link here, which I can't use right now, is a link to a specific page on his site that lists a variety of articles he's written over the years on many, many, many different topics. And this third link here is a link to one of those many articles. That's desert, not desert, so that's despite the fact that we're in the desert. And he gives I would actually link to it, but unfortunately the link is not working right now. It's like a 14-page article with a really good description, in his opinion, of why pie charts are bad. And he shows lots of examples of why they're bad. And he suggests alternatives that he feels are better. And he makes an interesting case. And he also makes lots of cases of 3D pie charts. If something's tilted away from you, the angle kind of looks a little different than if it wasn't tilted away from you. So you could potentially mislead people by, a 3D pie chart really doesn't do anything other than distort how big things are. He also makes an argument about, in general, we perceive linear things better than we perceive angles. So he makes a good argument of why a bar chart perceiving things, especially if there's a minor difference. I mean, if there wasn't a label on it, could you tell the difference between a 35% pie chart and a 25% pie chart? You probably can't tell, but you can tell one bar is bigger than the other. So he makes a very interesting argument. I would strongly encourage you to follow the link and read that article, because he makes a very interesting argument of why he doesn't like pie charts. Stephen Few has been, some people said if Edward Tufte is Moses, if Edward Tufte is God, Stephen Few is Moses. He interprets God and puts his own little spin on it. But they're both interesting. I would strongly encourage you to go to their website. Their books are available. The articles they do are often online. But they are the experts. But they also have their opinions, not rules. If I go to the next slide here. There's lots of different articles. I would encourage you to search yourself for different articles about data visualization. I picked a few of them. One of them talks about the difference between Tufte and Few. And another article is very interesting. Why Tufte is flat out wrong about pie charts. It's not a rule, it's an opinion. And this article talks about why, he thinks he's wrong. Another article was interesting. The what would Tufte say syndrome. People build something and it's useful, that they wonder, would the expert like this? Walt Disney once said, if you can get 5 experts to tell you something is a bad idea, do it. The corollary to that is, if you're sure it's a good idea. So, there are these guidelines and rules and these things, but, and there's many, a lot of them start with numbers. 4 principles for creating better dashboards, 6 steps to doing this, 7 sins of bad dashboards. Yes? Oh, sorry, hand up, sorry. So, again, there's lots of opinions, lots of examples out there. I would strongly encourage you to look at some of these and explore options and decisions. But, nothing is absolute. What's good is what works. Is a pie chart appropriate? It depends. It depends on the type of data. It depends on how many segments you have. If you have more than 5 or 6 segments and they're close together, a pie chart isn't very helpful. An effective dashboard is one that gets used and the user likes and uses. You could follow the rules perfectly, rules in quotes, and if nobody uses it and it's not effective, it's not a good dashboard. So there are no absolutes. Many people have variations on this next quote, but know the rules well so you can break them effectively. You should have good reasons for breaking rules. Picasso, before he did his own thing, studied all the standard way to do art and everything everyone went to, and then after he understood everything, he did something different. So it's important to understand why some of these experts have these opinions on things, and feel free to disagree with them if you have a good reason. And another quote, we talked about simplicity this morning in the general session, but simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. I want to be able to look at a dashboard and instantly know what it's trying to tell me. I don't want to have to search through the dashboard to find that out. I don't need a dashboard with 15 widgets on it, one of which is useful to me. So, one thing important about dashboards is, we'll talk about the next session, deep sea dashboards, but I'm using dashboards in a very generic sense. So if someone says to me, I'm using this technology and I want to make a dashboard, I don't necessarily assume they mean they want to make a deep sea dashboard. They might. Maybe they just want to make a web page that shows something, and that particular dashboard doesn't need deep sea. Fine. So I'm using dashboard in a very generic way. Now, deep sea does contain capability to create dashboards. And again, we'll get more details on that in the following session. So there are lots of standard widgets that are provided. You can do tables, charts, meters, scorecards, lots of different visual capabilities. We also have the ability to create custom widgets that we call portlets, where you control the complete layout of a widget and you can still put it on the dashboard. And we've had that since the beginning of deep sea. That's a visualization of some of your data. That data is based on a data model. And later in this week, we'll have a session on how to build data models. That's sort of the foundation of all of this. And we've had deep sea dashboards since the beginning of deep sea. Back last year, in version 2016.1, we introduced deep sea REST services. We'll get more details on that in the next session. Deep sea REST services expose the deep sea query engine via REST services, so you can use third-party charting tools. You want to use D3, High Charts, Fusion Charts, Google Charts, whatever tool that's out there, and program in JavaScript, for example, or other tools, and invoke through REST services the deep sea engine to query and get the data, and then populate, using the third-party charting tool, what you want to see. So that opens up options to do things in addition to deep sea charts. They can also be used in combination. Some of your charts, some of your dashboards are using deep sea dashboards. Some are using third-party tools. You can even combine them on the same dashboard. I've got a dashboard with 4 widgets. 3 of those widgets are standard deep sea widgets. The 4th is a portlet, which was written with another tool that uses the deep sea REST services to get the data. So you have the choice of how to do that, and that's actually the next session is called Data Visualization. The choice is yours, and Mark will get into lots of details on how and the different choices that you have. I told you it wouldn't take the full 45 minutes, and I wasn't kidding. So I just want to, the purpose of this session was to highlight some of the key things you need to think about when making dashboards. And I intentionally wanted to keep this session independent of deep sea technology or any industry technology. There's more general concepts of what makes a good dashboard. I would encourage you to complete the survey that's in the app. This session and all sessions are being recorded, will be available after the summit and learning services. How many people have already been to the Tech Exchange? Anybody yet? Probably not, because you went from lunch to another session to this session. The Tech Exchange is around the corner, and it's clearly labeled. It's in the spring ballroom, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody. And in there, you'll find many things. You'll find the learning services area, where you can learn about the developer community. There's one-on-one sessions you can schedule there. Also, there's that's also the room where the experience labs are. If you want to go to one of the experience labs, you have to sign up ahead of time through the registration desk because the space is limited. Also, we have most of our developers in the Tech Exchange. So if you have detailed questions on something about Deep Sea or something about SQL or something about mirroring or something about InterSystems Iris, that's the best place to go. Also in there, in the back of the room, we have some cool technology called the Huddle Wall, which is an interactive whiteboard. So we can do things, and we can even save stuff and email it to people, and it's interesting. You'll see it. That's also the room with the best coffee machine this week. So in the back of the room, you can get good coffee. So I'd strongly encourage, the Tech Exchange will be open all afternoon. This evening, there's a reception in the Tech Exchange. There you get a chance to vote tonight on the topics that we'll use tomorrow for the unconference. The Tech Exchange will also be open tomorrow afternoon. While the unconf is going on, the Tech Exchange will not be open. And the Tech Exchange will also be open on Wednesday morning as well. So as I told you, I wasn't going to be taking the full amount of time today. We still have plenty of time left. We don't have to take it all, of course. But I want to just open it up to general questions on today's topic, or other questions since we're here. And if you could, since it's being recorded, if you could ask your question in the microphone, if you have any. That way we could get the question and the answer. Anybody have any particular questions? Yeah, if you could just please say it into there so we can record it for posterity.
Yeah, I was just curious if you could show an example of a dashboard that you think is effective, because I didn't see any in your presentation.
Yeah, I didn't particularly include any in this. Let me look through here. But then also, while I'm looking, if someone else wants to ask another question about anything, please ask so with the mic. And I'm actually going to start up start up an environment here, so I don't have anything ready to show right this instant. But any other questions? Okay, it's going to take me a few minutes so if people want to hang around, we can stop the session part of it for now if there's no further questions. And since we have time, I'll be happy to hang around, but it's going to take me a minute or so to start the right environment. Does anybody else have any questions? Just last chance before we, okay. Again, I'm around all week if you have any further questions. And if you want to hang, since we have more time, I will take me a moment or two to get everything started up here. This is a simple table. Again, sometimes tables are a perfectly fine way to visualize data. This particular one is age. Let me zoom in here a bit. So this is a chart with two widgets. And actually, the dashboard itself is really just this widget here and this widget here. This is a table that is putting some data, in this case by age group, and then groups within that, and then how many patients we have in that group, and how many allergies they have in that by average. This is a very simple bar chart. In this case, it's showing me information about, not me, but favorite color, but a simple bar chart with labels, the ability to print it, because sometimes you need to print things. So it has a few options at the top. Once it prints. So it renders a PDF of the chart that I was just on. It has a few simple filters. I'm only interested in patients in a particular group. And it will adjust appropriately. Another one I have here, actually let me show you one that I think is a bad chart. That's an example of many of the different types of charts we do. So if you're trying to show all the types of charts we do, that's an interesting dashboard. As a real dashboard in production, that is way too busy. Like, what do I look at? So I would say in production practice, that's a bad dashboard. It does happen to show some of the different chart capabilities we have. So, and if I zoomed in, you know, oh, that's a time chart. Time chart has some interesting features, like I could, you know, change the year that I'm interested in and maybe zoom in a little bit further. So, but as an entire thing, you know, I think that's a bit too busy. I would say that this is not a good pie chart. What's the difference between this and this? Well, then you might say, well, I'll just put a label on it. But if you have to put a label on it, then why is the graphics not good enough? So so for some type of data, a pie chart can be useful. For example, notice this brown area down here. What percentage is that? At a certain angle, you might be able to see that it's about 25%. But as soon as you change the angle and it's not lined up perfectly, you have a worse guess of what it is. That's why that article from Stephen Few talks about, you know, bar charts are better for perceiving comparing than he thinks pie charts are. We've got. Let me bring up another one here. Here's I think this is a good chart. This is a chart called a Pareto Chart, which shows me, in this particular case, it's about the Whole Foods demo that's part of Deep Sea. And a Pareto chart is quite a popular chart. It shows me what I sold the most of. In this case, it's product categories. I sold more snacks than anything else. Then I sold pasta. So it's in descending order by quantity. But I also want to know the percentage. So the first 3 products represent 80% of my business. You ever hear the 80-20 rule? The Italian accountant Pareto was the guy who invented the 80-20 rule. so in this case, you know, so I might have 50 products, but 3 of them represent a certain. So, you know, by the time I get to the first product, you know, represents 42% of my business. Combined with the second product, it represents 69%. And the first 3 products together represent 80%. So ultimately, I'll get to 100%. This is one of the rare cases where having 2 axes on a chart is useful. In most cases, if you have dual axes on a chart, it's just confusing. So but there are rules and there are exceptions to rules and there are exceptions to the exceptions. So this is one case where this is a very effective chart. It tells me both what we sell the most and what percentage that is of everything we do. So Pareto charts are very handy. Now keep in mind, sometimes you have meters. Let's look at a meter example. You know, I just want a number relative to something. So by the way, sometimes the best meter is a number in a box. Sometimes that's the best visualization. Who says it has to be, you know, that's visual. A table is often the best way to visualize data. You know, a chart is one of the ways, but it doesn't have to be a chart. So one of the types of widgets that Deep Sea has is meters. And there are many different types of meters. Here's a meter where I can decide, I can show the value, but I can also show it relative to other values. I can also set the upper threshold and the lower threshold, and that's all depending on how you set it up. Look at another meter we have here. Here's some of the other meters. So sometimes I don't need it to be that precise. So a fuel gauge is a general indication of where I am based on what my goal is. And this one's relatively, you know, just a little bit below middle. Again, sometimes you just want to see a number. Sometimes I want to see a relative towards a goal. You know, like those the things they always have with fundraising events. They have a target goal and they show the thermometer of how something is. Sometimes that's you don't need the details, you just want a general thing. Also, this stoplight is a case of, if it's above the high threshold, it's going to be red. If it's below some threshold that you define, it's going to be green. And if it's in the middle, it's going to be yellow. And you just want to know, am I in a good state, a bad state, or somewhere in the middle? And sometimes that's all you need. You can drill further to find out details, but sometimes you don't want the details. You just want the high level. So there's lots of different types of charts. One of the things you'll see in Mark's session is he shows an example using a third-party chart, but getting the data out of deep sea. So there's many different options you can do. I mean, in general, for example, I can come in here and change the color of anything. I can change the color of the background. I can change the color of the bars. I can change the color of everything. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. You want to look at this, and sometimes too many colors can be confusing. Also, if you're embedding this in your application, chances are you may already have some standards of what colors your application uses. So I would strongly encourage you to keep those standards when you do your charts. We always use this as a background. We always use this color as, every time we do text labels, we do this. Do that with the dashboards as well, because consistency is important. Does that answer enough of your? Okay. Yeah, and again, if anybody has any other questions, again, we have plenty of time. This was intentionally a shorter session today. The next session starts at 3:30 in this room, which is Mark doing a session on the different choices you have technically to create dashboards, both with deep sea dashboards and using the REST services. How many people, I forgot to ask it up front, how many people still in the room have used deep sea? Give me a quick show of hands, a few of you, okay. How many people are thinking about it? Okay. Come by the Tech Exchange, because sometimes one of the key questions often is, what's the best way to get started? And I have lots of thoughts in that area, as do many of the people that can help you in the Tech Exchange. Raise your hand. We have, in the back of the room, we have Asaf Sinai. Asaf is the manager of our Deep Sea support group. So if you're using Deep Sea, you may already have talked to him. If you plan on, hopefully you will. Also, we have several of Asaf's support people who work on a regular basis on the support desk. Peter and Alessandro are here this week. And any particular, actually, since we have some time, for those of you thinking about Deep Sea, I think the most important thing is the use case. Do you have an idea of what you want to do with it? And what I strongly recommend in most cases is the projects that I've seen not succeed are I want to build the perfect cube that will satisfy everybody's problems for eternity. Or what do you want to do? I want to do analytics. Can you be more specific? Yeah, I want to do analytics so everyone can do everything instantly. Okay. I strongly recommend saying the first phase of a project will be, here are the 5 dashboards we need, or here are the 4 dashboards we need, or the 10, or whatever that is. And working with users, you need to determine what those should be. And that's the goal. And then create the data models, and there's a session on data models later this week, that you need to support those dashboards. Don't try to do everything at first. And make sure those first dashboards are the ones that are the most beneficial to people who use them. And you have to talk to users to find that out. And then people will say, boy, that's great, can we also do this? And your answer should be, that's a great idea for phase 2. Because if you're not careful, your 7 dashboard project turns into a 50 dashboard project. Scope creep in analytical projects is easy. It's easy to happen, and you should prevent. So the projects we've been involved with that have been useful are those very clear definition. We need a dashboard that does this. We need a dashboard that does this. Let's build them. We'll get some feedback. We'll add some more. The other thing is, for your end users, who are the end users? Are they only going to look at dashboards that you build for them? And for majority, maybe that's the case. Analyzer, which is another component of Deep Sea, which is the interactive power user tool, for certain users, that'll be great. And for certain users, that'll be frustrating, because that's more than they need, and they need a certain set of information. Dashboards can be interactive. Maybe they need a dashboard with 2 filters and the ability to drill down and maybe an option to print. Maybe that's all they need. That's all you should give them. Don't overcomplicate things for them. You want this person running an application, and part of that application is a dashboard they can use. You don't want to say, here's your application. If you want to do analytics, here's another tool. Go figure it out and use it. I mean, so one of the focuses of DeepC is embedding the analytics as part of the application. And the more you can do that, the more effective it will be for the user. Because the user shouldn't think of it as, I'm in the application and I leave the application to do analytics. They should think of it as analytics as part of the application. So any of those folks that raise their hand about thinking to get into DeepC projects, I'll be happy to talk to you later in the Tech Exchange, or talk to anybody else in the Tech Exchange about, I'm thinking about getting started with DeepC. Where should I start, or what should I do? Someone once said, it's great to learn from your own experiences, but it's also good to learn from other people's experiences. Not only the good experiences, but the bad experiences. So we've learned a lot over the years based on what people have done with DeepC. And if you're thinking of diving into that, we'd be happy to share some of those and to help you get started. Great. All right. Thank you very much for your time.